Hey YouTube, today on Tinker with Tools, we're going to be talking about 18 to 20 volt multi-head drill drivers. We've got 5 examples and a lot to go through, so let's get right into that on Tinker with Tools. Now, I've covered installation drill drivers or multi-head drill drivers before on this channel, but almost always it's been from the 12 volt variety. Over the past few years, we've had increasing popularity with this type of tool up on the 18 or 20 volt platform. Today we've got 5 different variants. We're going to run through a bunch of different comparisons, tell you all that you need to know, do some performance testing, and then even give you recommendations based on what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and jump right into the introductions. Now, the first one we're going to be talking about is the Skil 20 volt multi-head drill driver. It has some decent specs. I do feel like maybe it's a little bit better placed down on 12 volt, but for whatever reason, they did release this on 20 volt. This is going to be our budget entry today because it is by far the cheapest. Let's see how it stacks up to the rest of the competition though, and if you can save a buck and still get some great performance. Next up, what I'll call the OG in this category is going to be the Bosch FlexiClick, but right now we're talking about a Gen 2 variant. Now, they do have an older Gen 1 variant on the 18 volt platform, but I think if you're going to be buying one in 2025 and beyond, this is definitely the one you're going to be looking at. Now, this came out last year with less size, more power, added features, but still had all the same wonderful chuck attachments that they had on the previous model, but overall a nice upgrade. Now, one you may not be as familiar with is the general construction drill from Fein. Some rare things about this one is you are getting a 4-speed gearbox. Definitely stands out in this audience. So while it's not the smallest, it does offer things that none of these other drills can touch. So let's see if that stands out enough to be worth some of the added size that you get with this model. One of the newer models that we have talked about on this channel and I've showcased is DeWalt's 20 volt 5-in-1. They've had this tool down on 12 volt for a long time, but with them appearing to be abandoning that lineup a little bit, it was important for them to release it up on 20 volt. They did so on their Atomic platform, and there's a lot to like about this. Even if it's not the perfect tool, I think it's going to be pretty competitive today. Now, last but not least, we're talking about the Festool CXS 18. This is the 18 volt variant of the ever popular CXS 12, and this is definitely modeled after kind of the old school original installation drill driver. There's a lot to like about the 18 volt variant, so we'll go ahead and cover all the differences and maybe why you might want to choose the slightly larger version. Now, when it comes to size and weight, first off, with weight, there really are 2 distinct classes of drills here. First, the Skil and the Festool are going to be just super lightweight compared to these other drills. And then the Fein, the Bosch, and the DeWalt are definitely a larger, kind of more traditional style drill. I wouldn't call them overly heavy because they are modeled after compact drills for the most part, but they are going to definitely be a little bit heavier. Now, when it comes to the attachments, obviously there's a lot of information to share with you, so I'm going to put a chart on the screen. Feel free to pause that and take a look at the weight of the different tools. As we're going through it, I will just say that there basically are some lighter duty attachments. The Skil and the Festool are definitely a little bit on the lighter end for the most part. And then when you move up to things like the Fein and then especially the Bosch and the DeWalt, those attachments are just a lot heavier duty and maybe more robust. There's a lot more metal in them, and because of that, they do carry a bit more weight. And then when it comes to length, I took 2 length measurements to kind of give you an idea here. The first one is going to be the head length of the tool without any attachments on it. The Skil and the DeWalt are actually the shortest here at just under 5 inches. And then you do have the Bosch, the Festool, and then last but not least, the Fein, kind of in that order in terms of overall head length. Now, another length that I do know is important and is one thing I want to be sure to mention out here is basically the length of the right angle adapter, because that is one that you're truly trying to get into places that the regular drill just doesn't fit. Now, when we start talking about performance specs, it is important to note that all of these tools are going to be 18 volt nominal, 20 volt max. So they are all operating on an even playing field when it comes to voltage. They're also all brushless motors, so it's not like one of them has an advantage or a disadvantage in that regard. So when we start talking about torque, Festool and Fein have the lowest claimed torque figures down at 354 inch-pounds. Skil is going to be up at 450 inch-pounds. The top 2, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If you look at the claimed torque figures on the Bosch, it's only claiming 565 inch-pounds of torque, which is actually a little bit less than the drill that is right below it. So whatever whatever the actual number is. I think the 565 number is a little bit deceptive, but in terms of claim torque, it is the second most. The DeWalt is also a tricky one because here in the US, they do not provide torque figures for their models. Now this model is pretty similar to the DeWalt DCD 799, which they then also have in the UK where they do quote torque figures. That one is claiming 655 inch-pounds of torque. Now because there's some differences in the gearbox, let's go ahead and point those out. The Fein is the only one here that is going to be dealing with a 4-speed gearbox. So with that, it does gain a wider range of RPMs that this tool can operate at, with the max being all the way up at 2,500. And I will tell you, for certain tasks, having a lot more speed does feel a bit nicer. And then the Bosch, not the fastest of the day, but it does have a very healthy 2,100. Now, when we talk about the different attachments for the tools, that's where I do want to point out kind of the standard 4 that make it a 5-in-1, if you will, kind of a weird connotation. 4 checks is going to be the fact that you have a standard drill check, a 1/4-inch hex collet of some sort. Then you also have a right angle adapter and an offset chuck. There are 3 companies that give you all 4 of those out of the box. That's going to be Skil, Bosch, and DeWalt. Now with Fein, they actually only give you 1 single chuck in the kit when you buy this tool, and that is just going to be a 1/2-inch drill chuck. You can go ahead and purchase other adapters, but they are quite costly. If you were to try and outfit this kit to have those same things, it would cost you over $300 to get just the 3 to kind of complete the kit. Now Festool is only lacking the offset one. They do actually offer that. You can purchase it. It is a little bit on the pricey side as well. And so that would obviously drive the price of the kit if you were to try and make these apples to apples here. Now, when we come to special features of these various drills, the first one we're going to talk about is a Skil. These actually charge with a USB-C power adapter, kind of out of the box. This is a 45-watt adapter, so definitely not necessarily fast charging. Now, additionally, you can use these batteries as a battery backup. So if you need to charge your phone or something, you can do this right out of the box with these batteries. You don't have to have a separate inverter. That is definitely something nice that is there. Now, probably the most unique things about the Bosch itself is, one, it does offer included kickback control that is by far, in my opinion, the easiest to turn on or off in the entire market. And then they do offer something also called precision clutch, which can also be turned on or off. When it's turned on, when you reach the torque limit for the clutch setting that you're on, the motor just simply shuts off. The other thing that makes the Bosch unique is going to be the inclusion of the SDS attachment, where you can actually go ahead and purchase this for just under $100, and then you're going to have an SDS Plus attachment that turns this into a little kind of light-duty SDS drill. I know especially over in Europe where you do have a lot more block construction, that is definitely something that would put this at the top of a consideration for someone, is being able to do that without having to buy a separate tool necessarily. Now, kind of the standout feature, kind of the unique feature, I guess you could say, on the DeWalt is definitely going to be this caddy for the different attachments. Basically, they have the same connection method that we're going to talk about in a second for the drill. And with that, you're just able to go ahead and click these in. They do offer a kind of a belt hook or something, or maybe just kind of a rat clip. So if you're carrying pack out or some other modular toolbox system, you could just go ahead and hang this on the side and have those chucks ready and easy to access. Then with the Festool, kind of the things that separate it apart, first and foremost is going to be the fact that its 1/4-inch hex adapter is not just standard 1/4-inch hex. In fact, it is their proprietary Centrotech system. The downside to that, obviously, is there are proprietary bits. If you purchase them from Festool directly, they are very costly, in my opinion. There are a couple other vendors like Snappy, for example, that offer Centrotech bits on Amazon. Now, the alternative to that is obviously if you buy this locking 1/4-inch bit adapter, this is going to be far superior to the included magnetic bit adapter that allows you to use it. I just find the magnet to be really lackluster. This one is basically a Wera wrap adapter with a Centrotech end on it, and because of that, you're now able to put just about any bit in there and have it securely locked in place. And so I feel like this is kind of a must-have unless you're going to invest in the Centrotech system. It's an advantage for sure if you need bit stability, but at the same time, if you don't want to invest in those bits, it can be kind of a hindrance. All right, now as we talk about kind of the clutch of these different drills, obviously clutch operation is going to be one thing. For the most part, the Fein, the Skil, and the DeWalt all kind of have a standard clutch that is just going to kind of make that clicking noise when you kind of run into its torque limit, kind of cuts out that way. As I mentioned, the Bosch has what they call precision clutch, which is going to just kind of kill the motor as soon as it reaches that torque limit. I do find that really nice to use. Festool is basically the same thing, but instead of just cutting the motor, they have just a nice little beep to let you know you've done it. I definitely prefer that to kind of the noisier kind of clicking kind that you can still kind of bypass, having the motor kind of cut out. Really nice on those tools. Now when it comes to actually putting this into practice, what we did is we drove 3 screws. We'll go ahead and show you that, but basically 3 2.5-inch screws with each one of these on clutch position 3, down in speed 1 to kind of see what the differences are. For the most part, they're all decently consistent. Now the one kind of standout as being a little bit different in how it operated was that the Festool down in speed 1 actually drove the screws all the way down flush and then stopped them really nice and flush on all 3 screws, but definitely did not operate like the other 4 drills here in terms of cutting out with the screws still sitting proud. When I put it up to speed 2 with the same clutch setting, that's when you saw it operate more like the rest of these. So definitely when you have it down in speed 1, it does operate differently than speed 2. Just kind of keep that in mind of if you're wanting to stop well proud, probably keep it up in speed 2. Otherwise, if you're just wanting to drive it flush, that was pretty nice. But overall, the consistency of these, relatively good. There were a couple that were maybe not quite as consistent, but for the most part, pretty good clutches on most of these, and definitely something I think you can adapt to and work with. With the performance testing, I basically focused on 2 areas, driving and drilling. And with that, I picked some lighter duty fasteners where I'm not really pushing these tools to the normal limits that I would for a bigger, heavier duty drill. Remember that these tests are more representative of the difference that exists between the tools more than how it would perform on maybe a cabinet screw that you're more likely to do with these drills. So then when it came to the results of the performance testing, Bosch was the actual winner, with Fein coming in about 6 to 7% behind it. Definitely not a bad finish result there. And then DeWalt was about 18% behind the Bosch as well. Now Festool was about 31%. It is a lighter duty model for sure. Definitely expect it to be the case. So not necessarily a bad finish for that one, but just know you're not getting the full kind of 18 volt experience in terms of maybe some power that more of these mid-tier drills can do. The Skil, I really think that was meant to be a 12 volt because that's kind of how it felt in the performance testing. It was about 50% behind the Bosch in terms of what it was capable of accomplishing and kind of the performance times for it. Now, in terms of how I felt using the tools, kind of the impressions of the performance, the DeWalt basically has lower RPMs, and so when it comes to fast driving times, it definitely suffers a little bit there to the 2100 RPMs from the Bosch. But it definitely feels like it is right at the top in terms of torque and what it is able to accomplish. On the drilling test, these two were the ones that really didn't feel like they were breaking a sweat doing those drilling tests. With the Bosch's anti-kickback, I feel like you could push this one a lot further, going up even further than what I did, and still feel pretty safe using that tool. Now, when it came to the Fein, obviously the 2500 RPMs benefited it, and then also a benefit to it and being able to kind of maintain some performance when it had to drop down was the fact that it has a 4-speed gearbox, so you have some intermediate RPM levels where you're going to get a little bit more torque but dial down the RPMs a little bit. That gearing helps it to perform better and still complete tasks in a fairly rapid fashion. All right, so then price, the final category we're going to be talking about today. Skil comes in at $149, everything included. It includes a bag. It's a pretty decent offering. Not the most robust, but for $149, I actually kind of like it for that price. Bosch is definitely not a cheap option because it only comes as a 2-battery kit. Right now you can get it on sale, but normally it's going to be $419. They recently raised the price about 20 bucks on this one. So $419 for a 2-battery kit with the standard included chucks. This one's a little bit extra, but definitely worth it, and you can pick it up on Amazon. So $419, but right now you can get that for $339 through various places like Lowe's. I think Acme Tools has it on sale. Ohio Power Tool has it on sale. So coming in a little bit better, and remember, it is a full kit price. Now the Fein standard pricing here in the US is going to be a tool only at $324. Right now you can get it for Cyber Monday if that sale's still going on for $50 off, but traditionally you're going to be getting this for $324. Honestly, I probably would never have bought this drill, but there was one day where it was on sale for like $180 where I already had the Bosch batteries. That's when I decided to take a flyer on it. It's a nice drill, but price-wise, it's kind of price prohibitive. And then, like I said, you don't get a lot of the chucks with it, so by the time you do outfit it to be a more complete kit, it's a really costly proposition. DeWalt is sitting at a nice kind of budget price point, depending on who you buy it through, anywhere between $229 and $249. The one thing I'll say about this right now is part of kind of their holiday promotion. You can go ahead and buy the 9 amp hour FlexVolt kit, starter kit, and get this as a free bare tool. If you play the game over at Home Depot and return just the battery kit, you can get this price down to $141, which I get that it doesn't have batteries at that price, but $141 budget-wise, that would be the pick all day. It's a great option at that price point. Now, Festool, obviously not going to be cheap. It's the last one we're talking about for a reason. The kit, because you can't really do anything without batteries on this. The kit price on this one is going to be $528. But the one thing I will say is, unlike the 12 volt, which is still an expensive tool, being up on the 18 volt, at least now with these batteries, I can go out and purchase other 18 volt Festool drills as tool only. It's definitely the most expensive one here. And like I said, you're not getting that offset chuck with it. So if you need that, it's going to tick the price up even further. All right, so then when it comes to conclusions, one of the things I like to try and do with this type of video is give you a lot of different information. And on this video, I don't think the performance testing is necessarily the main thing that people are going to look at, but maybe some more of the nuance with the different tools, the connection method, the chucks that are included. There's a lot to factor in there. So when it comes to recommendations, here's kind of what I'll say. Budget-minded viewers, the Skil is not a bad option. I do think it should have been a 12 volt tool, but overall it's a nice option to kind of give you a taste for what this type of tool can do. Just don't expect heavy duty things out of it. The Fein is probably the one that I have the hardest time recommending to people, even though it's a drill that I do enjoy using. I think it's nice. I think it's fairly smooth. I like the 4-speed gearbox. it's just kind of price prohibitive to be able to go ahead and pick that drill up. You already have to have Bosch batteries to run it on. Then you have to buy some of the attachments for it. It's just probably not one that most people are gonna buy. Like I said, I would not own it if I had not picked it up on sale. Now, when it comes to Festool, if you're in the Festool market, this is probably gonna be the only tool that satisfies what you're looking for. I do think the 18 volt version is a nice tool. I think it offers a lot of good versatility. It is definitely probably the most compact professional level tool that we're talking about here today, and more in the style of that 12 volt kind of installation drill driver, just with a bit more performance. That's definitely going to be the one you're looking for. Now, when I come over here to these two drills, there's one big conclusion here for me where I think because they built this on the Atomic platform, there's a couple of things about it that I think maybe ended up a little less than what I think it could have been had they put it on the Compact XR. If they had taken the DCD 801 and gone ahead and made that the basis for this tool, I realize it might have added some weight, but it would have added a ton of performance and made this a really interesting proposition. It's a nice tool as it is, but I think if I were to tell you between one of these two, which ones I'd pick, I'd probably still tip just a little bit towards the Bosch, even though I love the connection method over here. Price obviously is going to tip in the DeWalt's favor, and I think a lot of people are probably going to choose that one over the Bosch. I just think some of the refinement of the Bosch is a little bit nicer. It kind of allows you to play more over here where the Festool is, but still have some of the rugged performance that you're getting from that DeWalt. So I think it's just a good mix between the two, and I love the fact that you can have the SDS attachment on it. So there you have it. I know that I don't give you just an overall recommendation, but maybe what you're looking for, that's kind of where I would go with these different tools. Now, as always, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions about this. If I didn't get something answered for you, leave it down in the comments below and I'll try and get the answer for you. If you like this sort of video, go ahead and hit that like button. And as always, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Make sure to turn on notifications so you get notified whenever I put out a new video. Now, as always, thank you for all the support. And until next time, I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.